Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my October 2021 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean at Sean the Book Maniac. He based it off of a real-life French literary prize, wherein the long list of the prize was comprised solely by reading page 112 of the books in contention. So that means that you don't have any of the context of the story, and you only have to go by the strength of the writing on that one page. I've been using this tag to slowly clear my TBR physical shelves since, well, the beginning of COVID, really. I'll link to my last video down below. I take 3 random titles out of this handy-dandy Books and Cats mug, just picking them at random. Then I'll read them out to you, grab the books from the shelves, read page 112, and then discuss with you which one I think is the best one, and that one should be joining my TBR list this month. Of course, the point of this tag is to play by the rules of saying the strongest page 112 should win the day, but sometimes I do let other considerations come in, like if I have a lot of BookTube prize reading, maybe I'll be inclined to go for a shorter book. But that being said, the BookTube prize is over for this year, but random sequitur, Robert recently posted his call for judges for 2022, so his video has all the information about how to sign up if you want to be a judge for next year's BookTube prize, and I'll link that video down below as well. Okay, with all that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and pick my 3 books, starting with book number 1. There's very few in here, so they clump together easily, but alrighty, here's one. Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald. Anyway, this is something my mother gave me, I think, a couple of years ago for the winter holidays, because I was interested in Jewish-related fiction, and this was one I think she picked up when she was at the Strand in New York even. And I've owned it ever since, and haven't read it yet, but maybe I will be soon. Okay, and we have book number 2. Should I try to go down a bit, maybe? Here's one. Ooh, The Veins of the Ocean by Patricia Engel. I think I picked this up from my library used bookstore in 2019. I think I should say that all the books in that cup are acquisitions from 2020 or before, but I'm pretty sure I got The Veins of the Ocean in person before COVID, so that had to be probably 2019. I remember it's an ARC even, and yeah, this could be good. And finally, book number 3. I feel like I'm just making them even more clumpy, but we can only do what we can do here. Alrighty. Ooh, Little Red Riding Hood Uncloaked by Catherine Orenstein. This was a book I asked for the holidays a couple of years ago, and probably my sister then got it for me. I'm pretty sure I heard about it through Jen Campbell's channel, because she is the one who is so invested in fairy tales and has read up on their history and provenance a lot, and I know she did highlight this book in one of her videos from a few years back, and I'm personally very interested in the Little Red Riding Hood story as well, so I asked for this book. And so this is exciting. It's a nonfiction book, so maybe I'll be reading that. Okay, you've now seen me grab all 3 of the books, and I'm going to go ahead, read page 112, gather my thoughts, and then come back to you. So stay tuned. Okay, I'm back to share my page 112 readings and thoughts with you. Starting with book number 1, Austerlitz, which indeed has a Strand bookmark inside. I could have sworn that Adela often hovered in the air just above the parquet floor for much longer than the force of gravity allowed. After our game, we usually stayed in the ballroom for a little while, looking at the images cast on the wall opposite the tall arched window by the last rays of the sun, shining low through the moving branches of a hawthorn, until at last they were extinguished. There was something fleeting, evanescent about those sparse patterns appearing in constant succession on the pale surface, something which never went beyond a moment of its generation, so to speak. Yet here, in this entwining of sunlight and shadow, always forming and refocusing, you could see mountainous landscapes with glaciers and ice fields, high plateaux, steeps, deserts, fields full of flowers, islands in the sea, coral reefs, archipelagos, and atolls, forests bending into the storm, quaking grass and drifting smoke. And once, I remember, said Austerlitz, as we gazed together in this slowly fading world, Adela leaned toward me and asked, "Do you see the fronds of the palm trees? Do you see the caravan coming through the dunes over there?" By the time Austerlitz repeated this question of Adela's, a question still imprinted on his memory, we were on our way back to the city from Greenwich. Our taxi made slow progress in the dense evening traffic. It had begun to rain. The beams of headlights gleamed on the asphalt, cutting through the windscreen covered with silvery beads. It took us nearly an hour to travel a distance of not much more than 3 miles to Tower Bridge, by way of Greek Street, Evelyn Street, Lower Road, and Jamaica Road. Austerlitz leaned back with his arms round his rucksack, staring ahead in silence. So this is a tough one for me. There's lots of run-on sentences. There's lots of interjections where somebody's talking and then somebody interrupts. And there's no quotation marks for speech, which is a big pet peeve of mine. So I'm thinking this is a no for me. These are a lot of the writing habits I don't really like. It is hard to get into the, rhythm of the story. I mean, well, there's all this beautiful language, all of this descriptive, beautiful language, but, what does it mean for what's happening and why should I care? I'm just not feeling it for this one, so I'm going to put it down. Book number 2 is The Veins of the Ocean by Patricia Engel. And it seems we stop at the page 112 is the end of one section before another section starts. "A baby will brighten things, Raina. Maybe it's your destiny." "Fuck destiny," I said, and he warned me not to tempt bad fortune by talking that way. Till he got locked up, Carlito was a church-going guy. First with Mommy, even when I refused to go with them. Then with Isabella and her daughter. They'd sit side by side in the front of the church, the perfect little family. "Don't you ever want to be a mom?" Carlito asked me that day. "Not by some huevon who won't even talk to me now." When it was over, he drove me home and helped me into bed. I slept for 2 days. "Y a esa que le pasa?" Mama asked. Carlito lied, telling her I'd eaten some rotten bistec, and just to mix me some caldo to settle my stomach. With Nesto in front of me, talking about his family, I consider for a moment all the times I might have created a family of my own, where I would be now if I let that happen. The only certain thing is that I wouldn't be here now, on this island, with him. "Why did you leave them to come here?" I ask. "Your children, I mean." "I didn't leave them. I just took the first step, so I can throw out the rope and they can come behind me." So I like parts of this. This is something that invites conjecture. It really seems to me like there's an abortion happening between the lines. We're talking about wanting to be a mother and not being a mother, and the protagonist or the first person is sick, and we're lying about why. So that's certainly what I'm thinking about, is that, this is about getting an abortion, but I might be, going too far with that, I don't know. But, it's a little confusing. There's some, pronouns and things that don't always match up, and so, maybe I'd understand more if I knew the rest of the story, but sometimes it got a little confusing. But for the most part, it seems to be a conversation between the protagonist and this man, Carlito, who it seems like she might be in a relationship with, illicit perhaps, because he's left his children to be with her. Although I really like that last line about going forth and first and then throwing back a rope. It's a way to still want to be involved in your kids' lives, I guess. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. And finally, book 3 is Little Red Riding Hood Uncloaked, Sex, Morality, and the Evolution of a Fairy Tale by Catherine Orenstein. And as a mirror image to last page 112, this is the beginning of a new section. So what do you know? When the Grimm brothers turned Little Red Riding Hood into a children's tale for Victorian audiences of the 19th century, the heroine became the embodiment of innocence. She lost all traces of her earlier French sexuality. Not until the 20th century was the boulderized Red Riding Hood defrocked, so to speak, and redressed. Or, in the hands of the legendary animator Tex Avery, simply defrocked. Avery brought the heroine and her wolf from the European forest to the Hollywood nightclub and transformed the fairy tale into a caricature of American courtship. In his Red Hot Riding Hood, released in 1943, the sweet heroine of Storybrooke tradition, who in her old 17th century original had served up a warning about the dangers of promiscuity, became her own symbolic opposite, a Hollywood stripper. Red Hot Riding Hood begins on the corner of Hollywood and Vine, the legendary spot of history's most famous nightclubs, where the wolf, dressed to the nines in top hats and tails, arrives for an evening of carousing. Grandma's house is now a bordello around the corner, a penthouse apartment lit up by a neon sign. Grandma's joint, come up and see me. A wiggling hand with a wiggling finger a la Mae West invites the passerby upstairs. And on stage at the Sunset Strip, a chic nightclub that advertises pretty gorgeous girls, no cover, Red Hot Riding Hood steps into the spotlight, all dolled up in makeup and a cape, which she quickly tosses aside along with her basket. So I like this one. I think I like it the best. I'm just very intrigued by the topic, even though in this particular section it seems to jump around a lot. It's like, oh, well, here's a little bit about Grimm's fairy tales, and we're gonna go straight into, a racy, saucy 1943, movie that, takes liberties with the story. But I would assume, actually, the Grimm's fairy tale part was more in detail before page 112, but who knows? What's really important here is that I'm just invested. I just like studying the story, and this gives a specific example of how it was utilized, specifically when it comes to Hollywood in this one genre. And then we get some callbacks to its origins in the French tradition and the Victorian tradition. So, yep, this has everything I basically wanted from this. So, I think I'm going to go with it. I think this is going to be the one that I add to my TBR this month. Got some nonfiction going on. Woohoo! So that about covers it for me now. I will leave the Goodreads links for all of the books I talked about down below. I also include in this outro a shout out to another TBR game or readathon, because I feel like I'm part of that world with this sort of tag, and I want to spread the love in the BookTube community. So this time I think I'm going to go with The Basket of Reeds by Bookishly Nerdy, just because it seems similar to what I do. She has these little plastic balls with either titles or prompts in them. I think it's one or the other. And she picks out, a specific amount at random and goes from there. So check her out. In the meantime, I guess I should get to some actual reading. I feel like I'm just topping my TBR a lot lately. I'm still waiting for a book from the library holds that I'm really hoping comes in before the end of the month because I want to read it for Goodreads Choice Awards, but we'll see what happens. In the meantime, I certainly have plenty to read, including this one book I just added, so stay tuned, and my next video will indeed be a Friday Reads video where I talk about what I'm actually reading. So in the meantime, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.